Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler, and welcome back to another show. I'm with Matt, the founder of ORATS, an options analytics platform built on top of over 15 years of historical options data. Our dashboard is integrated with Tradier, meaning you can research and discover trades on our platform and then seamlessly send them through to your Tradier brokerage account. Today on the show, we're going to discuss insights from component-weighted options data. We'll look at some of the unique symbols and calculations we have at ORATS and how you can use them to better understand the options market. Matt, do you want to get us started by sharing your screen and going over our positions from last week?
Absolutely. So we had one trade. We were playing the bounce, and the bounce did happen. We bought a calendar for $1.42, and it's now $1.64. So we're going to exit that since it's only $1, or it's only a 0.101, so it's 1 cent left in the short. So we're going to buy that in for a profit, and it's a good way to start the week, Tyler.
All right, good to hear.
What are we talking about this week?
So this week, we're going to look at a very unique thing to ORATS. It's called our component-weighted ETFs. It's a symbol that we have at ORATS. We create the symbol. It's denoted by an _C at the end of the symbol name, and we have over 30 of them for the most common SPDR sector ETFs like XLK, XLY, and SPY. So we're going to look at those and explain what those mean and how you guys can use them to better understand the options market.
Great. And before I get to that, I think this is important. So when you're trading through ORATS, and I was going to close this out by saying close all, but it says placing result will result in excess of closing order. So I go, oh, I already had an order on. So it saves you from getting double filled. So I think that's an important thing, Tyler. So I'll replace this, and like I said, get a fill here. And now we're out. All right. So yeah, that _C. So just stepping back even farther, all these ETFs have, or all the market-wide ETFs that we look at have components. So the S&P 500 has about 500 stocks under it. The diamonds have 30. The Russell have about 2,000. And so we update these from these weightings from time to time at ORATS. And it's important because we can then look at the average for all of the calculations that we do and weight those for the underlying ETF. And then that comparison actually turns out to be very interesting in a lot of these measurements, especially just the straight implied volatility, but they matter in other things as well. Does that make sense so far, Tyler?
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit more about how we calculate those values? Like how do we come up with a symbol? Like it's not traded, right?
Right. Yeah. So let's just take SPY, for example. We know what the implied volatility for SPY is, but like, what about the weighted average of all the components? So what we would do is you would go in and, type in the weighted, the components for SPY, and then I spelled it wrong, but then you find what the components are. I think it's these guys, and then what the weightings are, and then what we do is then we go in and find. We then go in and find what the so Apple is one, Microsoft's another. So you multiply the implied volatility for Apple at the 30-day constant maturity, and then we do this X earnings. So that's important too, because if you're weighting everything near earnings, you'll kind of see everything going up. What the important thing to do is normalize it for X earnings, and then normalize it for the weighting, and then you could see, Apple's times 4%, Microsoft times 3%, and then you get a weighted average or an expected average for that particular reading. And we do it, like I said, for all the core readings. We just take that average. And then what we could do is, when we're looking for indicators, or in this case, just looking at something on a graph, we can then graph that and see if it has anything to do with the movement in stock prices.
That's very cool. And this is something unique to ORATS, right? That it's very hard to get in other places, especially with all these indicators that we have.
Yeah, I haven't seen it anywhere else. So IB versus similar is the opposite of correlated. So it's negatively correlated. Okay, so negative correlated to the stock price. So what that means is, when, we could see it in this graph a little bit, when this relationship goes down, the stock usually goes up. When this goes up, the stock usually goes down. So we saw that, pretty aggressively this last move. Lately the market's really gone straight down, and it's recovered a bit, but what we saw was that relationship go straight up. So I think it's interesting to look at a relationship. It also happened with just the underlier, but SPY went up in relation to the components a lot faster, as evidenced by this particular ratio. So this ratio usually hangs at about 50%, meaning that the SPY implied volatility of, like, I'd say the average, let's say 10%, is about 50%, or half of the 20% average of the components. And recently it got as high as 78%. So that's quite a move in that. And it actually kind of foreshadowed it, like, especially if you look at when the turn happened, that's when the market turned, and really we started seeing a sell-off. People talk about correlation, but this is really just the implied volatility versus the components. But this is one of the most important ones, and this is why we feature it in the Outlook tab for every stock, Tyler, in the Outlook tab for the most appropriate underlier that so if we had Apple, it would be SPY. If we had something TSM, it would be SMH or something. So we try to get the best. We try to get the best ETF components in there to compare everything to. So yeah, you're right. It's a unique thing to ORATS, and it can be very important.
All right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, what are some of the other ways that you can derive value? Looking at the slope there, I think there's a few things that you can use in options trading, in addition to just trying to predict the price. The IV and slope are very important when looking ahead and seeing what kind of trades you should be making. So we also look at the slope of the components versus the underlying.
Exactly. So now this is the slope versus the components slope. So this kind of did the opposite. So this, I think this is more positively correlated to the market. So when this goes up, market goes up, and this goes down, market goes down. And that's a pretty good correlation there. And especially good because it's leading. So when we lost this, the market came afterwards. So you like to see these leading indicators, and now it looks kind of low. So that looks kind of strong for the market, actually. So that's the slope one, and that's the one that we usually look at. We didn't do it for contango, and I have these massive Excel files where we study all these things, but those tend to be the most important ones, are the implied volatility and the slope. that we like to use with the components, Tyler.
Nice. One thing I want to talk about, I think this is how we can find a trade for this week. Now that we've sort of visualized that graph and seen it in the Outlook tab, we can use these indicators in the stock scanner.
Right.
And that, I think, is one of the most powerful use cases of this, because you can compare any indicator to its component ETF.
Yep. So let's design something. So let's use implied volatility, right? We'll use X earnings, implied volatility. We'll use 20 days. And we'll do the ratio to the best ETF underscore, right? So for example, let's just go back to the Outlook. Like let's look at TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor. So we're going to be looking at, first of all, the volatility, and then how the volatility moves. This is actually XLK. And so how Taiwan Semiconductor, that also did pretty well with positive movements there. The slope hasn't changed a whole lot. But anyway, that's when we say we're going to match this to its best underlying, so that's what we generally do. So in this case, we kind of went the opposite way, right, Tyler? We went from the symbol to the ETF, whereas before we went from the ETF, which was SPY, comparing those to its components.
So, yeah, I mean, you can go both ways. I mean, you can do analysis with these with just regular stocks like Apple or
right.
Taiwan Semiconductor, or you can do it with ETF. So I think that's a really cool use case of it.
Yeah, and then what I'd like to point out here is that when you go the opposite way, these tend to look whereas before it was a negative indicator. So what I'm going to write now is for the ETFs, the IV is negative. But for the symbols, it's the opposite. So do you get that, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good generalization of it.
Yeah.
I think it is important to look at each individual symbol to see the strength of the correlation, which we measure here in the Outlook tab. We give some explanations of it. Actually, the ratio to the best ETF is just one of the things we look at. We also look at versus our forecast of IV, and as well as our percentile ranking of IV throughout history.
Right. So let's go now with that, armed with that information, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good way to find stocks or ETFs that are kind of outside of their normal range, right? So do you have any ideas, or should I just continue with this?
Well, I wonder if we have anything in the templates, or we could make something to put in the templates right now.
I don't think we have any. Sure. Oh yeah, here's the IV ratio to the best ETF. So this is finding high volatility. So I'll search on _C. Yeah, so it's just these two. Okay. But if you want to find low or high volatility, what we did in this template. Template is something that everyone has when they log into the ORATS system. You'll see things like, what's the IV ratio to the best ETF? And so we'll look for outliers on that in order to find low or high implied volatilities.
Yeah.
And so the way that that's set up is it's the IV30 in this case, and I would use X earnings ratio to the best ETF. And you'd say you want that min or max. So the top ones are over and the bottom ones are under. And it just depends on how much. I mean, some stocks are way over. Think of a biotech that has huge volatility. So that might be 2 or 3 times what the underlying ETF is, even though it's IBB for the biotech ETF. But some of these ratios, it's a little bit hard to normalize, I guess, is the point here. So it's
what should we be looking for? I mean, what type of trade are we looking to make, right? So the first step, generally, you go to the stock scanner, you find a list of stocks, then we'll send those to the option scanner and look at different option strategies. What kind of strategy is this? Like a pairs trade? Like, are you pairing the ETF with the like a different stock, or how do you normally trade these comparisons?
Well, I could think of a couple. So here is the list of all of the _C. So first of all, we have all. So that just takes just an average of all of the stocks, and that's really interesting to look at, I think. Here's IBB, ICN. So like a lot of these are, you could see that most of them are the spiders, but the gold, and you have SMH, and you have the Russell and the Qs and everything. So one way to use it is to do it like we were looking at before. Is there is it over the most undervalued? Like, what's the highest of those? So relative to the best ETF, like you look at those kind of market wide ETFs. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to look at the components versus the ETF on a percentile basis, and so that's kind of neat. So there's, like I said, everything that we have, and that's a little bit more normalized. So if you look at the IB percentile, for the year, and then just look at not a ratio, but a single versus the best ETF, then we could start to, actually, we should clear out all these first. And we'll start anew. Ratio to the best ETF. And we'll just say it's 1. And we didn't get anything on that.
I wonder if that indicator, it could be that indicator might there. I think there's a different IV percentile. It's better.
Oh, right. Okay. Let's try rank. No, that's not getting any either. I wonder if we don't have those in here right now.
I think it's IVPCTILE.
Oh, there it is. There you go. So the top, let's just do the top 10% and just see what these look like. Oops, we slowed this in here. So then you have some odd types of, and we'll go. So you're seeing like a lot of the pro shares and the leverage ETF. So if we go to the asset types, we'll just look at only stocks. So that will clear out those. And this is kind of interesting. So we have some the IB percentile ratio to the best ETF are high for some of these. Gold, American Airlines Group. So let's look at American Airlines. It's only $9 stock. Well, that's really getting killed lately, huh? Let's look at Chevron. That's a little bit interesting that the percentile of Chevron is that high. So let's look at Chevron. We go to the trade builder and look at what the percentile is. It's probably pretty high. so look at how like the volatility spiked and it has come down. So the percentile, this is the ratio. Oh, let's do the. So that's 1.22. It was higher, but still I guess that's a high rating for this one right now. So what that's saying is Chevron is still quite a bit above its percentile. Let's just look at that without. Let's look at the percentile without that. Yeah, look at how high the percentile is still with Chevron. So this might be one to look at, like some type of maybe selling a short put spread. Looks like it's on the bottom of a range for Chevron. You want to try a single name like this, Tyler?
Yeah, I think I like using the _C indicators on the single names. I think it's one of the unique ways that we can analyze it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So this is a volatility play, long or short?
Well, it's the vol's really high in Chevron right now compared to what it normally is. So we'll do out of the money put spread. And so you could, I don't think we've shown like trading directly from the trade builder on the show, but this is a nice way to do it.
It's a pretty cool,
like
click and point and click interface.
Right. So, so this looks like a decent trade. Let's send this off. You're basically, you're collecting $1. The stock is 144. You're selling 140s. The probability of profits 73 in this, and you're getting a 1 to 3. So pretty close to the probabilities that you'd expect, but this still looks like a good trade based on that implied percentile. So let's give them a couple cents, enforce it, and then go from there. So
any exit alerts on this? Any insights from backtesting short put spreads on Chevron or similar stocks?
Yeah, so I don't know that Chevron's in here, but let's look at some backtests, similar stocks. So CBX, I don't think we'll see that. We're only going to have the top 100 in here. But let's do like Caterpillar short put spreads. Let's look at Caterpillar short put spreads. That one's about a month, so we'll say 20 to 50, and then those deltas are, let's see what comes up for that. Oh, actually, this isn't going to do the percentiles, right?
Won't have any exit triggers.
Yeah, so let's do one that has exit triggers. Let's look at XLE. I think we only have a few of them. Let's just look at SPY for the short put spread here. So this is a 25. This is somewhat similar. 25%. They just have a stop loss.
Mostly 25% stop losses. That's interesting.
Yeah, are the best ones. Yeah. So let's try that. Go to our position.
What do you think is that a viable approach to look at? We're comparing Chevron to SPY short put spreads. I mean, I know that returns from short put spreads can vary depending on the stock, but I mean, what do you think? Is that a viable approach to finding an exit trigger?
This is so let's just look at what's common, right? So they both have kind of relatively low volatility. It's a short put spread that has similar characteristics, and it's very difficult to test that kind of exit strategy. So I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah, I think it is a good approach. At the end of the day, a short put spread performs, it has the same sort of payoff structure across all different symbols, right? You're
Right.
making money when the stock goes up and you're losing money when the stock goes down. So
Right.
I think it is a good approach to finding what kind of exit triggers or entry triggers work.
Right. Again, so the way that we did it, we just said add alert, and it was a trade alert, and we set the profit loss, below. And this would be a profit loss if we made 50%. And then I made the market a little bit wider, because sometimes if it moves off of that, right now we're looking at a market width under kind of standard situations, but if it gets wider, you're able to set that. You don't want to set it too wide, because sometimes the market makers will widen the market out. Like if the stock just crashes or something but comes back, you don't want to necessarily get an exit alert based on that. But this is why I've set it just slightly wider than normal. Now when I press submit changes, you should see the alert there, and then the alerts will show up in our exit alerts, and then I guess so we'll see that it's 25%, and then we put a note that it's for the Trader Hub.
Great.
I think that's a good show on looking at the component weighted averages. If you really start to understand that and try it out for various strategies, it's another good method for getting kind of a theoretical value of a particular stock. People use percentiles, which is basically the IV compared to where it's been. But now you could look at the IV where it's been versus its related components. So I think that's a very valuable data point to have, Tyler.
Yeah, great insights, Matt, and very unique to ORATS. I think I really like using the component weighted ETFs in the stock scanner, and sort of using that as sort of the first point in finding a trade for the week. So I like that it's a good starting point, and there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. I did post a comment, a link to where we explain the related equities and sort of the different component ETFs. There's a list of all of them there for you to see, and how you can use them in the stock scanner as well. It's in the ORATS University page. If you guys have any questions on component weighted ETFs, you can always ask us in the community tab. That's if you're a subscriber to ORATS. If you're not, you can reach out to us at support@orats.com, or leave a comment on this YouTube video. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Trader, for hosting, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks, Tyler.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.